A little bit of a surprise show on this Sunday, but we got big breaking news to talk about. Joy Reid is out at MSNBC. And you know what, guys? This is something I told you was going to happen. In fact, I was looking through my records here on this little channel I have on YouTube, and I learned that as recently as 3 weeks ago, I was telling you that, you know what, Joy Reid is going to be out at MSNBC. And it is now official. One Joy Reid, who hosted a show called The Reid Out, aptly named, is out. She's gone. You know, she follows Andrea Mitchell, who then went over to NBC News. There's no chance in H-double-L. Joy's making it to the big leagues. And she follows Chuck Todd as well, who's out. I mean, they're just cleaning house. There's another anchor that's out there, too, and a few more potentially on the way. We're going to get to all of it. But first, let's just figure out what went down, what I told you was going to go down, because she was, like, beyond irresponsible. Okay, there's irresponsible, and then there's beyond irresponsible. This woman was beyond irresponsible, and not only was she beyond irresponsible, but she never had the, how shall I say this? Maybe the intellect to be able to back up what she was saying. So she was just a flamethrower. I mean, there was just a grenade after grenade after grenade. She'd just throw out there into the atmosphere and say all this crazy stuff. Now, in Rachel Maddow's defense, she's equally dangerous, but in different ways, because she tries to back it up and manipulate facts to try and take you down a rabbit hole that is one giant conspiracy theory. This woman had no rabbit hole. She had no facts. She was just all emotion, and she'd try and get you all worked up, but there was never any synthesis to her arguments. And I'm just saying this, talent to talent, okay? She wasn't very good at her job. Oh gosh, maybe she got there for reasons that we won't talk about, reasons that you can't get there anymore, right? The DEI days are over. We can get into all this, but basically you've got a network, MSNBC, that is so disgusting to those in the higher-ups at Comcast, one being Brian Roberts, and it makes such little money and its ratings are so bad that they're like, what are we doing with this thing? I mean, this is not the future. Streaming's the future. And by the way, if we're Comcast and we own NBC, this could be a little bit of a problem because NBC is governed by none other than the FCC under Donald Trump. And Brandon Carr is making it really, really, really known that he's going to take away broadcast licenses if you're wildly irresponsible, like this lady was and is at MSNBC. She's gone. She's got like her final show this week. Things are changing fast. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, hit the alert bell, because you never know. I might come here on a Sunday. Take a look. I want you to see what she was saying on the eve of the election. This was like election eve, and she's like, oh, my work has been done. You can't elect Hitler, Mussolini. I mean, this is irresponsible, crazy talk. The guy had already been president for 4 years, for goodness sakes.
And we begin our final sprint, having arrived at that point in the election season where basically we on this side of the TV screen have said all we can. We've laid out the stakes in this crucial election, where one side stands for freedom while the other meets the textbook definition of fascism, namely a far-right dictatorial regime like Hitler's Germany or Franco's Spain or Mussolini's Italy, but also white-ruled South Africa before Mandela and the black majority took control, or Vladimir Putin's Russia, Viktor Orban's Hungary, or Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela today, that suppresses the rights of women and minorities.
So like, I don't want to get your blood pressure up any more than I want to get my blood pressure up, but she's what you call a wackadoo, okay? Like, and is incredibly uninformed. I mean, I've spent time covering a lot of these countries, a lot of time specifically covering Venezuela, have been to Venezuela, and let me just tell you, Trump is no Maduro, okay? Like, I have to be careful about laughing too much because, as some of you know, I've been a little bit under the weather. I've been taking my balance in nature, one of our sponsors on this show, and I'll get to that later. But I had to come on and talk to you about this because I knew this day was coming. Like, I knew it was going to happen. I'm sort of sitting there saying, like, why are they taking so long? She is a huge liability. I mean, look at what she was telling people, for goodness sakes, at Thanksgiving after Trump had won. She's like trying to divide the country and tear people apart. This is gross.
people may not feel so confident that they're safe with you. This is not crazy. This is legitimate feelings of fear of you and a feeling that you might not be someone they could trust. If this thing goes way south, autocracies go south real fast and things get ugly and people get asked to do things and turn people in and point people out and turn on them. And if you're voting affirmatively, gleefully for this, people might, may not feel so confident in you anymore. That's real, and you kind of have to live with it. So if you think that you can vote for what people see as their destruction and then demand that they still are cool with you and kiki with you and have Thanksgiving with you, I think you're kind of missing the point of what people are upset about. They're afraid. And autocracy and fascism are things that are legitimate to be afraid of. So you may want to step back.
You just got fired. You're fired, as Donald Trump would say. That woman needed to be fired. I mean, I've played you guys that clip before. On that day, I said she needed to be fired. I mean, I've been saying this all along, and it was peculiar to me. What was going on with the media? Why were they so crazy? As we like to say in New Hampshire, because I grew up skiing, out over your skis. I mean, the media was like, blah, 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 blah. Trump's this, Trump's that, Trump's so horrible. Well, now we know. And we can talk about that too, because there was a lot of money involved in all of that. There was a narrative that they were trying to spin for some rather economic reasons. It mattered to their bottom line. But, look, he won despite all of them. And guess what happened? Her ratings sank. Morning Joe's ratings sank. Everybody is plummeting. And Comcast is like, woo, we don't want anything to do with this. No, thank you. This is nothing but a liability. I mean, we got this crazy woman out there saying, okay, she's done with white women. I mean, this is hate speech. You want to talk hate speech?
Hey, I just want to give some free advice to the white progressives, particularly white progressive women who may be thinking about marching against the Trump victory, maybe putting back on the P-word hats and doing that thing. I would just say probably don't send any of those invites to any black women you know. I'm just going to tell you right now, they're not coming. I'm pretty sure black women have resigned from the Save America Coalition, Save Democracy Coalition, and definitely the Save the Democratic Party Coalition. I think that's probably not happening. I would just keep those invites maybe among your own friends, because I don't think they're coming. But yeah, I think black women are now on the Save Black Women, Prioritize Black Men, and Prioritize Black Communities, Black Businesses, and that. And, the black spaces, but Save America, Save the Democratic Party. Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
Yeah. Okay. You're fired. You're fired. So you can go work on all your black women stuff over on your own little thing somewhere, if anybody will watch. I mean, I don't know how much of a market there is for that. I'm just judging by the ratings, right? The ratings that showed nobody wanted to watch her. Nobody at all. So what are you doing with a liability like that hanging around? I mean, she was actually threatening black people. If you don't vote for Kamala Harris, then you should be ashamed. You should be mortified. I mean, this was holier than thou. I'm telling you, there was no credibility to anything she said. She couldn't talk about policy. She has no intellect. She just goes to the worst possible place at all times. It's actually gross to watch. On-camera person to on-camera person, okay? You got to have some intelligence upstairs. You can't just be the flamethrower.
Given the just stratospheric entrance of Vice President Kamala Harris into the presidential campaign, and she has now secured enough delegates to become the nominee, you're going to look real crazy being on the other side of that line, particularly as a person of color, but really as anyone who claims to have any connection to the culture. You're going to look real weird and real lonely on that side. The door needs to close behind Amber. And she looked crazy over there. But shut the door behind her. You really are going to look crazy being on that side, given the cultural phenomenon of Vice President Kamala Devi Harris.
Yeah, Kamala lost and you got fired. There is. There is justice in the world. I have to be careful about laughing too hard today. All right. But I can't help it, right? Because the whole thing, I mean, it's sort of funny. It's actually horrible and pathetic, but there's some irony in all this, shall we say. You had a wildly irresponsible broadcaster who had been on the air with her own show since 2020. Right about the time I left, right? I said goodbye to mainstream media, and they were ushering people like Joy Reid in. Why? Because, well, I actually talk the truth, say the truth. What did I tell you? 2020, they were going to use and mobilize March 2020 against Donald Trump to try to take the election. And sure enough, we saw hysteria from the media. It was just one of those things that they could use. Now, I'm not debating or suggesting in any way that it wasn't truly awful for a lot of people. I lost loved ones. I know everybody lost loved ones in all that time. But my point was always keep calm and don't go crazy. Because my advice, at least to the administration and what I was trying to get across, was you can't shut the whole country down. You just can't do it because they'll run with that. And then they've got the ball and they're going to run it all the way to the finish line. And I was right. I tend to be right. Sometimes I'm too early and it gets me in a lot of trouble, but I'll always tell you what I think. And, you know, I have an informed viewpoint. And I think that's a big difference between, say, like the Joy Reids of the world who have very uninformed viewpoints and what I try to do as a journalist. But, you know, think about where I started, right? In finance and financial news. And you have to have a viewpoint that is always informed because you got money on the line. Good excuse to tell you about 76 Research. My financial research company, I started with my dear friend, and look at those numbers. We're way, 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 way up. And why? Because you have to have instincts, but you have to have information, right? You have to be informed. You can't just say things wildly like the Joy Reids of the world. Like that is not okay. And so at least me, myself, and I, right, as a journalist or as a financial researcher who's trying to say, okay, where am I going to put my money today? Like, I actually have to have an informed viewpoint. And sure, I get it, like, politics influences things. But as an investor, like, how can you see through the BS? I mean, in March 2020, I saw through all of it. I'm like, buy the stock market, baby, because it's down 2,000 points, right? And you know that the Fed is going to be there, and you know Donald Trump is going to be there, and the bottom's not going to come out from under. It's not the Great Depression again, like the Anderson Coopers of the world wanted you to believe. Meanwhile, you know, the DEI, CRAP, and that's what it was ruining everything. How can you invest if you're not thinking about companies in terms of their profitability, but just in terms of, oh, who do they have on the board? Is there anybody with purple hair, you know, that thinks they're a bird? I mean, is that going to get me to profitability? And this Joy Reid, that's all she was about. That's all she cared about. Her DEIs. I guess she was one of the DEIs since her ratings sucked. Here she is talking about Donald Trump and all those lawsuits against him. Think about it in the context of what we know now.
In prison. But for me, there is something wonderfully poetic about the fact that despite the fact that even if convicted, he's not going to go to prison, the first person to actually criminally prosecute Donald Trump is a black Harvard grad, the very kind of person that his former staff, the people who worked for him, Stephen Miller, et cetera, want to never be at Harvard Law School. But he was. And he came out and graduated. And he's prosecuting you, Donald. And a black woman is doing that same exact thing in Georgia. And a black woman forced you to pay a $175 million fine that's out now also in question because the people who put it up, that might not be legit. Donald Trump is being held to account by the very multicultural, multiracial democracy that he's trying to dismantle. And for me, there's something poetic and actually wonderful about that. It says something good about our country that we're still capable of having that happen. Go DEI. My DEIs are bringing it home on today.
And you just got fired. And Kamala didn't win. And DEI is over. You know why? It's unconstitutional. It's discriminatory. And it doesn't produce the best in society. It really doesn't. You've heard me tell the orchestra story, right? Because I have a classical music background. A singer. And I love that to this day, if you audition for the New York Philharmonic, there's a curtain up in front of you. So you play whatever, right? You're the violinist, you go in, you play some Mozart sonata, and guess what? They don't know if you're male, female, gay, straight, black, white, Asian. They know nothing. They're only listening to the music. And of course, the libs are furious about this. They say, well, we need more black representation at the New York Philharmonic and the LA Philharmonic. And I'm like, really? Because if they're just picking the best violinist because that person plays the best, don't you want the best orchestra? Do you really want somebody who's maybe not as good, maybe plays a little out of tune and tanks the whole thing with it? I mean, if you don't get me wrong, I'm all for giving everybody access to these opportunities, but you don't do it after the fact when you're auditioning for the New York Phil. No, you do it when the kids are like 2 and 3, because by the way, you know by 4 whether you get a real violinist or not. Okay, so you can't fix it after the fact, Joy Reid. In fact, I feel bad for all those black prosecutors out there that had no cases. I mean, look what that doesn't actually give them a good name. Now, does it? It's America, okay? And in America, we try not to see color. I know the left wants you to see color. You're somehow racist if you don't see color, but you're racist if you do see color. I mean, it gets you kind of twisted and all done in knots. It's like we're supposed to celebrate women, but then again, there's a zillion different genders apparently, according to them. So I always get confused when it's like Global Women's Day. What does that really mean? Because apparently anybody can think they're a woman. This is all ending, and it's good. Donald Trump coming out and slamming MSNBC this week. Look at what he said. I guess this was just yesterday. It's all in the wake of his lawsuit against NBC Universal and the settlement he got, and he's calling it, MSNBC, a threat to democracy. Yeah. I mean, when you have flamethrowers like her out there not actually debating policy, you know me, like I'll call Trump out if I have to call him out. In fact, you know, I've been kind of looking skeptical at some of Elon's math. We can talk about that tomorrow in terms of the dividend checks. I want a dividend check. You want a dividend check. I don't know how he's going to do it because, again, the numbers don't add up. I will always tell you exactly. But you know what? This is informed. Informed, not just like these bonkers statements like Joy Reid and other MSNBC hosts make. He wrote here, MSNBC, commonly known as MSDNC, get it? Is a threat to our democracy. Such lying and misrepresentation is bad. Bad people at the top. That is Donald Trump talking about MSNBC this week on Truth Social. You know, they thought they could get away with this. Think about that. You had the entire establishment thinking they could get away with these bonkers comments. And it's all getting exposed. And I love every single moment of it. I really do. I'm here for all of it. And we can't let them forget. We can never let them forget because they put us all through hell and back with a whole bunch of lies and misinformation. Take a peek.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see the president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do. We have a president who, if in fact it is proven, has been assisted by the Russians and may in fact not be a legitimate president.
The one thing that Trump is fearful of when it comes to his being president is that finally we will see how illegitimate his victory actually was.
I have an objection.
I object to the 15 votes from the state of North Carolina. I object because people are horrified.
He's an illegitimate president.
Do you believe Trump is a legitimate president?
What I believe is that there's no question that the outcome of this election was affected by the Russian interference.
Okay, so it just goes on and on. I mean, you could watch it for a long time. This was their spin. This was their narrative. Somehow they thought, well, we don't have to abide by him because he's not a legitimate president. Now they're like freaking out because he's back. By the way, there's a certain beauty to the fact that he's back now after having 4 years on the sidelines, knowing what they're going to do. And it's all coming out. Elon just went in there with his algorithms and he found out he's got $55 billion USAID going to all kinds of crazy stuff, really crazy stuff like transgender operations in Guatemala, $2 million. The DEI musical in Ireland, the trans comic book in Peru. I mean, just some of the highlights, shall we say, where your tax dollars are going. It's bonkers, I know, but think about how much we're going to media outlets to sell that narrative that you just saw.
Okay, so we knew the U.S. government runs a $2 trillion deficit every year. We're in debt.
I should point out that this is David Sachs, brilliant tech investor. He was part of the original PayPal crowd. And David is now the crypto czar in the White House. Here he is.
$40 trillion. And we also knew that anytime anyone tries to cut anything in Washington, the whole city screams bloody murder. Okay, so the question is just why? Well, now we know. The money is all going to them. It's like round tripping to them. New York Times, getting paid. Politico, getting paid. Bill Kristol, perennial warmonger, getting paid. Ukraine, getting paid. Like 11 out of 12 publications, Ukraine, getting paid.
Incredible.
Viktor Orban, who's the prime minister of Hungary, was saying that he's very popular in Hungary. His political opposition, funded by USAID. In Poland, the left-wing political opposition funded by USAID, and on and on and on it goes.
BBC, you wonder why everyone in the UK,
paid.
so yeah.
Like
I couldn't believe the BBC's getting paid.
Every left-wing organization in the world seems to be getting paid by this slush fund at USAID, which disperses about $50 billion a year. That's $1 billion a week. That's actually a lot of money. And so it makes you wonder, the left in general tries to portray itself as a movement of the people, that it's grassroots. This is the exact opposite. This is AstroTurf. This is basically money coming from the top down out of Washington to fund all of these groups, maybe not even in the United States, like all over the world. So it makes you wonder, what is the real level of local support for these left-wing policies all over the world?
There is none. Okay, there is none. This is just a giant spending bonanza. Like some kind of money laundering operation. They take your tax dollars, they give it to causes that will benefit them. Like that has to end. It is ending. And that's what's beautiful about what's going on right now. And so now the question becomes like, who's next, right? Who is next to be fired at MSNBC? Alex Wagner is one of them. Do you guys know her? Alex Wagner, she's taking over or did take over for Rachel Maddow. But then Rachel decided to come back for the first 100 days. So Alex Wagner is out of a seat. In case you weren't familiar with her, I'm guessing you probably aren't. Here she is.
Denies. Given this, Trump today had to give up on his choice of a MAGA loyalist from Florida who is a fixture on Fox News and will instead be nominating a MAGA loyalist from Florida who is a fixture on Fox News. Trump has chosen former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi to be...
Okay, so that's who she is. And she's gone as well. There had been talk of a woman who hosts a very late night show, one Stephanie Rule, having to have a massive pay cut. And maybe she agreed to it because she's desperate to be on television. If she agreed to this, then maybe she stayed for that God knows when show. It's like the midnight hour. Even Acosta was smart enough not to take that gig. So I think a few are going to see problems. Here you go. Alex Wagner, who hosted the 9 p.m. show, she's losing her anchor chair after Rachel Maddow returned to 5 days a week at the network to cover the first 100 days of the Trump administration. You see, the problem is that the ratings are down. Okay, so Nielsen Media Research has seen there's this like 53% jump in primetime. And guess who's picking it up? Well, for one thing, podcasts, right? Like you guys are coming over here, everybody's cutting the cord. And if you're not cutting the cord, you're going over and you're watching Newsmax or you're watching Fox because they actually know what's going on. Whereas this team over there in La La Land at MSNBC had it all wrong. And now the question is, does their morning show get hacked? I'm talking about Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski. Are they done too? Entirely possible. I mean, they're certainly trying to, sweet talk some people. Don't forget, they went down to Mar-a-Lago, I do believe, right? But before we get to that, this is Mika Brzezinski just days before the election going on The View to tell people, oh my gosh, this guy's so bad, he's Hitler.
You need to believe him. And these are the final hours. We need you. We need you, and all of you to vote.
Yep. There you go. So, Mika, I think you heard us before you came out. We were talking earlier about yesterday's Trump rally from hell at Madison Square Garden. So what did you make of it?
Well, I think it was everything that you need to know about Donald Trump in one weird white nationalist Nazi-type rally. And, of course, there's historic parallels to where and when this happened. But
excuse me? Again, highly irresponsible. The guy had been in office for 4 years, and now she's saying he's the next Hitler. I mean, that's just insulting to Jews that were killed. I mean, you're talking about 6 million people that were slaughtered. You're talking about our soldiers that fought in World War II. You're talking about our allies that fought, everybody who lost their lives. And these idiots, because they have an agenda, are out there trying to compare the Republican nominee, who's now the president, who had been the president, to Adolf Hitler. I mean, that's just wrong, okay? Like, really, really wrong. You ought to be a little smarter than that. She's clearly not. Her husband's the same way. I will tell you, though, you know what? They're political. Total political animals. Which is why they went down to Mar-a-Lago. They went down to Mar-a-Lago after they found they were getting spun off.
We could all be fired a year from now or whenever this happens. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you never know. You might be fired a year from now. And Elon doesn't even need to buy the company. You see, Comcast is spinning off MSNBC. They're estimating the valuation somewhere around $7 billion. There's some tax savings for doing it. They want to get rid of all their NBC Universal cable channels. This is for a variety of reasons. Number one, cable's done. Okay? Everybody's over here. We get it, right? And so they're trying to stream. They've got the Peacock streaming network. They want to focus on that. They want to focus on NBC and that product, and they want to keep it safe, away from the toxic language that you see at one MSNBC. But they're going to throw CNBC in there and Sci-Fi and Oxygen and all of these little networks that they have together and roll them all up, and they're spinning it off in something called SpinCo that will be publicly traded. But here's the thing. If you're an investor, why would you buy this? Like, why would I ever purchase a share in this SpinCo with the likes of the crazy Joy Reid? Well, they got rid of her. But they got a few other crazies over there. In fact, one of the women taking over for her is that Simona Sanders or something. And like, she's kind of out in left field, shall we say, too. We'll watch her carefully, because I've heard her say some rather extreme things. So I don't know if they're going to really be able to fix this problem they have. But I'll tell you, shareholders will fix it for them, because the stock will sink. This is going nowhere fast. And I'll tell you, it's the reason why Joe and Mika are getting so nervous. And this is the reason why Joe and Mika decided to make a little pilgrimage to kiss the ring at Mar-a-Lago. You know, they're just lucky that Donald Trump is actually a pretty forgiving kind of guy. He invited them down there. They went and had a talk. Oh boy, people were mad. Their ratings really sunk after this one. Watch.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues.
I can't watch her anymore. Like, I just can't. Nelson Reyes, thank you so much. So appreciated. I love that you love the show. Again, Nelson Reyes, thank you very, very much. Much appreciated. There we go. We can see you right up there. Listen, I mean, I kept laughing, and because I'm a little bit under the weather, my voice is catching, so I'm trying not to laugh, but it's so contrived. They've written it out in their little scripty script, and they put it into the prompter, and then they're reading it, and they have to say, we went down to Mar-a-Lago but I will say this, like, they know which way the wind blows. Unlike Joy Reid, okay? Like, Joy Reid is just, woohoo, not so smart, and she really doesn't get the way the wind blows. I don't think these two are particularly smart. I think they're pompous and exhausting, this whole idea that, well, my father, he had to deal with some people that were not so great. Spirit-filled, welcome back to the show as well. Good to see you on this Sunday. Great to have you here, too. We're getting, kind of some regulars. Make sure you guys subscribe and hit the bell, because you just never know. You just never know. Sometimes, like on a Sunday, I come on because we've got big stuff. I'm glad that you enjoy these sort of live premieres. They're kind of fun, right? There's definitely no scripts here, right? It's like the opposite. It's the opposite of what you see on network television or cable television even. It's a very different kind of format, but I'm telling you, more people are going to go. I think that Joe and Mika are political animals and are talking to the right people in charge, and they are going to continue to try and talk to the right people in charge. And so maybe they'll be okay. It depends on sort of how they do. They still want to have influence, right? Like, they see their show as, well, nobody watches it, but they see their show as being influential. And so in order to continue courting that influence, you got to look like you know what's going on in DC. Well, how do they know what's going on when they're just sitting there sour grapes all the time? And so they may, I know you hate to hear this, but they may get to live another day. I think it's this Simona lady that's going to take over for Joy Reid. If she can't get herself in check, you've got a few others. You know that Chuck Todd is out, that guy, Ahmed or something, Hassan, he's out. I mean, there's going to be a few more. I'm not sure if their late night host is going to make it. It's not that she's particularly bad. It's just that she's also not particularly good. And, they may just not need her, especially that late a program. So we shall see. But I'll tell you, there's going to be more people on the chopping block over at ABC. And I include Whoopi in that group. So I was right. Was I not? I was right on Joy Reid. And I'm telling you, I'm right on Whoopi, too. We got to get to that. But first, shout out for Balance in Nature, because I tripled up. I'm probably taking too much vitamin D at this point, because when you have a cold, you want to be really, really careful. So I've been drinking lots of hot tea. I've been drinking lots of water. You guys have been so sweet. Take the tea with the lemon. I've been doing all of that. And I was able to get on the air today, right? So I consider that a plus. I consider Balance in Nature one of the reasons I'm able to kind of rally, if you would, and that's because I am getting my vitamin C, which my dad tells me is really, really important when you have a cold, and I know I need my vitamin D. I mean, that's just been critical. This is the first cold I've had this year, knock on wood. The kids have had 6, so I'm way ahead of the game, truly way ahead of the game, and I credit these guys. You can get 35% off right now with my code word Trish. They're one of our show sponsors. I've been taking it since last January. I really think this is my first cold since last January, so pretty good track record. 1-800-246 1-800-246-8751 is their number, 1-800-246-8751. You can read all the testimonials. You've, of course, heard mine. Give them a shot. Go look at it. It's a money-back guarantee, so no harm, no foul. 35% off with code word Trish plus free shipping. There's going to be some heads to roll over at ABC News. I'm convinced of that. I mean, there's a big story. I've been telling you this for a while, but this just came in the New York Post. Within the last 24 hours, it says morale is so low. Well, they've been firing people. They've been firing some top producers over there at The View because, well, let's just say those producers can't get the likes of Whoopi and Sunny and Joy under control. Now, can they? Okay, here's the headline. Morale is low. Morale is low because they're firing people, and the head producer has asked them to dial back some of their criticism of Donald Trump. It's very interesting. I've been watching this, and the first thing I noticed, one, was that Whoopi was totally dialed back, like right after the election, immediately after the election. So before the election, she was saying all kinds of crazy stuff, really crazy stuff, uninformed stuff, similar to what you're hearing from the Joy Reids of the world, or Mika, or even Joe Scarborough. I didn't get a chance to play you his Hitler best, Mussolini best, but she had a similar tone. And then all of a sudden, Donald Trump wins, and the very next day, she's like, well, let's wait and see. So that was clearly coming as a directive from the producer, likely because Bob Iger, who's the CEO of Disney, I've known him a lot of years. He used to come on my Bloomberg show all the time. I'd interview him. I think I had him on Fox once, too. And, he came back into this seat, and he's like, so he doesn't really like Trump. And he really doesn't like Elon. Remember, he pulled all his advertising from X. But he also gets that he might have a little bit of a problem on his hand because Brendan Carr, again, head of the FCC under Trump, sent him a letter at the start of the year saying, we don't have to renew those ABC affiliations with you because all those affiliates are getting kind of, my words, not Brendan's, crap programming from you, and Americans don't trust the programming that they're getting from ABC News. So maybe we don't need to actually continue this. And so I guarantee you, and I know how these things work, Bob calls head of ABC News calls head of The View, and this producer goes out and says, okay, we got to change it. I mean, on top of that, you have Georgie Pie, little George Stephanopoulos, who's probably exiting this summer. He's fired. Like, he's not going to be able to continue on in that show. In fact, I haven't even seen him on that show that he does, that weekend show. I think Marco Raditz hosted it again this weekend. He's the former Clinton guy who's now supposed to be a journalist with capital J. Like, he has no bias. He said some things that landed him in a whole lot of trouble and ABC News in a whole lot of trouble, to the tune of $16 million that they had to pay to Donald Trump and his lawyers. So Georgie Pie, he's out. And Whoopi could be next. So morale is low, okay? You got it, morale's low at The View. But she's going on and, she's saying stuff about now Elon's kid. So she can't go after Trump, so she's going after Elon. And she goes after Elon's kid, and Joy Behar joins in. I mean, that's how low these people have sunk, okay? And that's why I think she's going to be next in line. First, it was Joy Reid. Next, it's going to be Whoopi. Then it's going to be Joy Behar. The Joys are going. Joy Behar already put her property in Sag Harbor on the market for $10.5 million, all 4,000 square feet of this little Victorian house. I don't know, 10.5. I think she's a little high on that one, shall we say? Where's Letitia when you need her? Hey, Letitia, look at the valuation of that thing. Anyway, here's little X looking positively adorable. This is the son of Elon Musk in the White House, and then Whoopi comes after him with it.
So yesterday, Elon Musk took his son X to a press conference. I did not name the child. And I don't want to hear any more mess about our names, okay? Okay?
Oh.
Anywho, he took little X.
Funny. And little Instagram.
He doesn't own Instagram. He doesn't own Instagram. He just took little X with him to a press conference in the Oval Office to defend himself against critics who say he should not have the power to gut the federal agency.
Our thanks to MR.
Get this, people. Now we're streaming every weekend right to you with an all-new show.
Before we get to that, I just want to say thanks to Newsbusters and our friends over at MRC because they do a really good job at clipping those things from The View. So our thanks to them. But anyway, you heard where she went, right? So she's attacking the kid. So she's being told by the producers, don't attack Trump. So now they're going after Elon. And it wasn't just her. I mean, Sunny Houston, who is an attorney, and she's got like 4 legal notes. I have to keep reading legal notes on the air because she keeps saying such wildly irresponsible things. I mean, you're an attorney, girl. I guess you're a bad one. A very bad one. You know, there's a lot of attorneys out there that don't really want to be attorneys. They just want to be television stars. This attorney, Sunny Houston, used to be a fixture on Bill O'Reilly's show at Fox. So she's one of these people that went to law school so that she could be a broadcaster. I don't really have a lot of respect for that. I just got to say, like, look, you know, I actually did start in finance, not with the intention of being a broadcaster at all. I never thought I'd be a broadcaster. I actually didn't want to be anything in the arts because I had pursued a career as an opera singer, and I realized I was not cut out to be a starving artist. So there was going to be nothing that I wanted to do that was performing in any way, shape, or form. So I went to work at first D.E. Shaw, which was a hedge fund. Actually, Jeff Bezos worked there as well. And we were kind of quants and trying to, you know, trade based on, well, I won't get into it. But then I went to Goldman, and I actually loved that job because I was covering emerging market sovereign debt. And so that meant I had to be really steeped in the political intricacies of the countries we were covering. And it was when I was there, you know, they'd offered me a really great opportunity. And I remember talking to my husband, and he's like, Trish, I know you. You're not going to like this. You're just not going to like this. And he was wonderful. He pushed me. He said, why don't you try the reporting thing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, you sound like my mother. My mother was a print reporter, actually, for the Boston Globe. As a kid, I used to go out with her on stories, and she was always like, you should be a television reporter. So of course, I'm a kid who does not want to do anything that my mother wants me to do. So I rebelled and said, I'm going to be an opera singer. Anyway, long story short. And then I rebelled again and said, I'm going to go work on Wall Street. And so, you know, when my husband said, hey, maybe you should give this a shot, I said, oh, you know, all right, maybe. So I interned at NBC Nightly News back in the days when Tom Brokaw was there, and back in the days when we didn't have all the technology we have now. So you know what? I used to be responsible for typing the transcripts. All those piano lessons helped, right? I was a fast typist, so I would type the transcripts of all the interviews that we got in. If I saw a good soundbite, like a good thing, like I'd type it up and I'd star it. And anyway, and I moved forward from there, and I wound up having this career in news. But I would say that, you know, when you're a Sunny Houston and you find that you're just going to be a television star as opposed to actually practicing law. I mean, at least some of the doctors out there, who's the guy over at CNN, Sanjay Gupta, at least he's a brain surgeon. He actually still does surgeries. I have a little bit more respect for that. Anyway, I digress. Sunny Houston is now trying to be the new thorn in the administration's side, and she's much like Joy Reid coming up with baseless, ridiculous, pathetic arguments that make no sense as to why Elon Musk, and therefore Donald Trump, it's just she's not allowed to go after Donald Trump apparently, are just so bad. Elon's the worst, and he's just some kind of, I guess she would say, racist that's trying to hurt her people.
Get this, people. Now we're streaming every weekend right
Oh
to
boy,
you.
that was actually a commercial I wanted to show you. We'll get back to that in a second because there's one person conspicuously not in it. Here we go.
And I think when that equality starts popping up in terms of diversity program, equality now feels like oppression to those people who were at the top of the ladder, not necessarily because of their merit, but because of their identity, right? And so in my view, when you look at the stats, it is really clear from McKinsey, actually, a consulting firm that Pete used to work for, that firm found that companies with more diversity financially and socially outperform those that are less diverse. So the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion, it makes sense. And I think we can all agree that we want our workforce to reflect what our world looks like.
No. So, that was actually a McKinsey story that was goosed, I don't know, by USAID. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I kind of question the authenticity, shall we say, of that consulting company's reasons for giving this. Okay, now, don't get me wrong. Like, you want a lot of viewpoints at the table. It's one of the points I made on bringing in Tulsi Gabbard, right, to the administration, because Tulsi had a very different viewpoint than the establishment, and that's very helpful to hear. And Donald Trump is all about hearing all different viewpoints. I think if you're an informed person, you should understand all these other sides. These guys never had another side. I mean, they're sitting there saying Joe Biden's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I remember Joe Scarborough from MSNBC telling us, I have never seen such a strong, articulate Joe Biden. This is the best Joe Biden ever. All those the guys coming apart at the seams and clearly struggling with some issues related to his age. I'm sorry, but you weren't allowed to say those things. They have nothing to go on. They can't talk policy. And so this is what they resort to. This one's bad. So this is Sunny Houston, the lawyer that's not really a lawyer, just wants to be a TV star, can't get her facts straight, has to read legal notes because she's always in trouble on ABC, saying that Elon is nothing but like, slave owner from the 1700s, effectively. Listen.
I think he does too, though, don't you? No, I think he does. But my question, really, I think we need to reframe the discussion. If the problem is these programs, what is the solution? Should we just then depend on the benevolence of Elon Musk and white billionaires to hire women and people of color?
No.
Should we just depend on corporations to, on their own, make the workforce more diverse? They didn't do it from 1776 to 1965. Why do we think it's going to be any different?
1776 to 1965. Wow. Okay, so she's saying Elon, by getting rid of DEI, he's going to send us back to the 1700s. I hate to break it to you, Miss Sunny, but things have changed. And in the real world, you actually want to reward someone regardless of color. One of the craziest things that's happened, and if you look at some of the economic studies, is that Black America has actually lost out over the last however many years. I mean, take the last 4 decades, say. In fact, you can go back to Lyndon Johnson, and actually, I suspect that that's a lot of the source of the problem. And they have not kept up in terms of income inequality with whites. And this is all a result, in my estimation, of incentives that didn't encourage family and work ethic. These are the things that are so intrinsic to who we are as a nation, right? That work ethic, that code of family unit, where you're helping yourself, your family, your neighbors. This is why a lot of groups that come here, we see them do incredibly well. You look at Greek Americans, for example, and that family unit that helps support everyone. There's just many, many examples. But when you come in as a government and you say, you can't get ahead unless we give you X, Y, or Z, then you actually start to deteriorate that population in ways that make it very, very hard for them to recover from. So things have to change, and we need to get away from handouts. We need to have more accountability. We need to incentivize people in the right ways. I mean, hey, I like the flat tax idea. I like the idea of no internal revenue service. Let's stop taxing work, right? Can we tax other things besides work? Let's think about this in innovative ways. I don't know as it's all going to get through, but hey, gosh darn it, what we got going on is not working, especially when you look at inner cities. I think all these politicians are on the take, and this DEI stuff is partly to blame. Reminder, you can go over to 76 Research, my financial research company, code word dollar. I want you to use it. Get the 76 report, look at those model portfolios, because again, don't rely on Uncle Sam to take care of you. No, you take care of yourself. That's what this nation is about. ABC, however, they are in mega trouble, not just because of Georgie Pie, right? Not just because of Whoopi and Sunny and Joy Behar, but they've also got a news division. Don't forget those disastrous debates that they had. And now Donald Trump is calling them out.
Members of Congress in red districts are facing pushback from voters in town halls. We know that Americans voted for you on immigration and the economy, but these voters say they're angry and frustrated by these firings. They don't like the work of Elon Musk and these other actions. What do you say to them?
Who do you work for?
I work for ABC News, sir.
Who?
ABC News.
No wonder. Let me just tell you that I have today the highest poll numbers I've ever had. I have today the highest poll numbers of any Republican president ever. We haven't even checked the Democrats, but that's what I was just told. And they like the job that we're doing. They like the job that Elon's doing. He's doing something that a lot of people wouldn't have the courage to do. We want to streamline our country. We want to streamline, because you know why? Because we want our country to survive and thrive. And we're finding billions and billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse. Billions, and I mean numbers like you wouldn't believe. And we haven't even started yet. So it's actually just the opposite. We've polled it, and people are thrilled. They can't even believe it's happening. And it won't affect many people. It only affect the people that get caught stealing. The waste, fraud, and abuse is at a level like nobody's ever seen. It's been going on for years.
And nobody wants that, right? You work hard for your money. The idea that somehow the federal government is giving out to all these crazy passion projects of the left to try and keep them in power, not to mention just like wacky stuff, right? That I would suggest that most people do not actually support. Like, what is that all about? And yet, you know, ABC, who the president has no use for, whose producers there on The View have suggested that they may want to tone down the anti-Trump rhetoric. They're trying to pivot. They're going after Elon. And then when they need to go back after Trump, they bring in none other than this very uninformed, really atrocious representative from Texas, one Jasmine Crockett, who's making a run at trying to be the next AOC. Listen.
He right now has a 53% approval rating. It's higher than it's ever been. 70% believe that he's fulfilling his promises, and 45% believe Democrats should be more moderate. What do you take away? I think there's a lot to make of those numbers. What's your takeaway from that?
My takeaway is just like the election. We've got to do better at education. People don't understand, but you will understand when those hospitals in rural America start closing down even more. You will understand when you don't have your Social Security. You will understand when your Medicaid, your Medicare goes away. You will understand as planes continue to fall out of the sky. Soon you will understand why it's important to maybe have...
She's a political animal, is she not? She's a political animal, and she's also not really American, dare I say. And I'm going to tell you, if you're rooting for Mexico or you were rooting for Canada instead of the good old USA, I think you got a problem as a member of Congress. Here she
really
is.
Been the one to call it out. The fact that I'm rooting for Canada and I'm rooting for Mexico a lot is really wild. But they are really the ones that are speaking truth to power right now. They can see what it is, and they were like, we are not messing with this crazy regime from Mar-a-Lago, and basically calling them thugs. That's what it is. But I'm like, y'all knew who he was when y'all elected him. So don't act surprised.
She also doesn't want the $5,000 check. I don't know if we're going to be able to get the full $5,000. I'll tell you that, because I've been looking at the math and it's tricky. But she's just going to turn it down. She said $5,000 doesn't matter to Americans, and I'm like, okay, speak for yourself, honey. I think a lot of people in your district would kind of appreciate a $5,000 check. Wow. So ABC has a problem. Disney has a problem. There are going to be more hosts fired. So it's happening at NBC, right? Now we look over at ABC, and they've got a problem there. At The View, they've got a problem with George Stephanopoulos. He's expected to be next. And this is actually turning into not just an ABC News problem, but a Disney problem. Because Disney as a whole, don't forget they own ABC News, they're having issues. They got a box office disaster. I've been warning you about Captain America and how some of the numbers weren't looking so good. Well, sure enough, this is the latest. By the way, no one likes it on either side, which is kind of interesting. So progressives hate this, and actually conservatives clearly hate it because the guy's out there saying that he doesn't really love America. I'm telling you, you can't make this up. Greg Williams, thank you for your generosity. Much, much appreciated in the super chat. Thank you for that. But I'm looking at Captain America, which is becoming one of the very worst reviewed movies in all times. all times. And Greg, by the way, thank you for pointing out I'm working on a Sunday. I'm working on a Sunday. We can talk about Bitcoin a little bit later. I'll get back to that. Yes, I'm working on a Sunday, even when I'm kind of under the weather, because this is a big story today, all right? Like there's major media shakeup, and it's affecting from ABC to NBC to now Disney as a whole. And it's a business story as well. So that's why I'm so into this, right? Because it's just amazing how everything's changing. But part of it is the DEI equation too. So people don't really like this movie. Captain America has just become one of Marvel's worst reviewed films amid protests from both progressives and conservatives. So the progressives are saying, like, this is just a boring movie. It totally stinks. Like, it's no good. The plot line, this, that, and the other. And then you've got conservatives that are like, well, wait a second. This guy, he just said that Captain America doesn't really represent America. Well, they're not into that. This is Brave New World facing a huge problem at the box office. It's like a box office free fall. It's putting it among the Marvel Comic Universal Group, whatever, MCU, we're going to go for short, one of the worst releases ever. And Bob Iger has already said he wanted to change that. He doesn't want these things failing. Take a look at this piece in Forbes. Okay, so it got a really bad score in terms of its reviews, 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. Only one of 3 movies in MCU's catalog to actually, which has 35 films, to get such a bad rotten score. Okay, so the critics don't like it, the people don't like it. And then you go down, it says the movie's poor reviews come on the heels of Disney CEO Bob Iger stating on an earnings call last year that Disney, particularly the MCU, would reduced output and focus more on quality after several films, including the Marvels, failed to make a dent at the box office and received middling reviews. I remember that. I remember that call, and he basically was like, yeah, we need to do a better job. And yet they're not doing a better job. They're not doing a better job. And you kind of wonder, is it because they tried to go too woke? Is it because they were more concerned about having, a minority play Captain America that maybe, I don't know, like, does he not have the chops? I don't really follow him as an actor, but I'll tell you, I don't know how he is as an actor. I don't know how the plot line is. Maybe the writers just were really bad at their jobs. But I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't like this soundbite that I'm going to play. Here he is on the international stage. He's over in Rome. He's trying to promote his movie, and he's saying it's not really representative of America. Well, you know what? I don't think Americans are really going to want to see your little movie, Anthony, when you don't actually talk up what's good about Captain America.
For me, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term, America should be one of those representations. Like, it's about a man who keeps his word, who has honor, dignity, and integrity, someone who is trustworthy and dependable. It's kind of, this is kind of like an aspect of a dream coming true. When I was a kid, all of us as actors, I believe, want to get back to that day before someone told you no. When you look out your door and you see a 5-year-old kid with a stick and he's slaying dragons to save the princess in the tower, that kid really believes there are dragons out there. That stick is really a sword and he's really trying to save that princess. And then one day somebody told him, no, there are no dragons, that's not a sword, and that princess is not there. And all of his little dreams were dashed. So, as an actor, I feel like our job is to get back to the day where we see that dragon and we slay that dragon to save that princess. And that's kind of what this movie was for me.
Well, that's great, Anthony. But here's the reality in the new world in which we live. Shareholders want a return on their dollars. They've invested with Disney. They've lost a lot of money. The stock has actually been cut in half from its highs back in 2020. So you either make movies that people want to see or you don't have a job. And Bob Iger has actually made that one kind of clear. And by the way, he's on your side. He likes all this DEI stuff, but he's a realist because he knows he's not going to have a company if he doesn't actually produce some profits. He already had Nelson Peltz breathing down his back. Nelson Peltz, the activist investor who tried to take over the company. And one of the points that Nelson kept making was that the movies weren't resonating anymore. All they could come up with was like sequel after sequel after sequel. And then they're reinventing Snow White. More on that in a second. But again, the critics hate this thing. Even the Washington Post hates this thing. The Hollywood Reporter hates this thing. So you get the mainstream media in the entertainment world hating on your movie. I don't think this guy's going to get a sequel. I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't think he's going to get a sequel. By the way, he knows he's not going to get a sequel. He knows he's not going to get a sequel. He's actually said that to Esquire magazine. Steve Frischman, thank you. Good to see you in the house today. He knows he's not going to get a sequel. He admitted that because, if it doesn't do well in the box office with the returns, then it's over because that's how it works. And guess what? So far, not looking good. Not looking good. Okay, just not looking good. You know what is looking good? My portfolio. My portfolio, 3 of them. American Resilience, Inflation Protection, Income Builder. Go check out 76research.com for more. You can get all of these names, 10 to 15 stocks in each one. It's really, you know what? Or if you don't want to do that, you can do code word dollar and get the 76 report at 76research.com. I'll tell you guys, I'm just amazed by the stupidity of Disney. Look at this one. Snow White. I mean, they're going from bad to worse. The film division, Disney is like totally clueless. So they keep coming up with these sequels and they keep ruining the sequels. It's like, no, but it was a beautiful story and it was a love story and the prince rescues her. And what's wrong with that? Apparently, there's a lot wrong with it, according to the new remake of Disney and Rachel Zegler, who now plays Snow White, who, by the way, prides herself on being a Hispanic actress above all else. I don't think she even speaks Spanish, but whatever. Yo hablo español. Probably better than Rachel, even though I'm just an Irish girl from New Hampshire. Anyway, Rachel Zegler is the new Snow White, but she was cast at a time when Disney was all about DEI, right? The DEI. Well, now they've dumped 2 of their DEI programs. They're 2 key programs. And they're doing this because investors are like, it's not working. We need shareholder value. We need return. We've written on this actually at 76 Research because this is kind of an important thing to understand. You can use code word dollar and you can get that report on Disney. But listen, they're like, hey, you know what? This Reimagine Tomorrow campaign, it's over. Shareholders are like, no more. So they've gotten rid of the DEI section in its 2024 SEC 10K report. This is according to a new regulatory filing. And they're basically getting rid of it all from their website as well. I mean, look, a couple things going on. One, investor pressure because they're not making the money that they should right now because they have focus on other things. And then the other thing is that they would actually be in violation of federal law and the Constitution because if you're hiring people just based on these external factors like the color of their skin, then you're actually not necessarily hiring the best people. And so that in and of itself is discriminatory. Anyway, one of the people that they hired before they got rid of DEI was Rachel Zegler for this Snow White. And it's amazing because people really hate this movie already. Like the trailer just came out on YouTube and check this out. It's got more than 1 million dislikes. And I think that's a record for YouTube. Like a huge record. I just went through and I was looking at some of the comments which were super funny. And people are like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe I wasted that time watching this trailer. They're really not into it. The poison apple is the real hero of this movie. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Ooh, I missed that one. What did they say? They're basically like, forget about it. Don't go and see this. They finally did it. They made a movie that nobody actually wants to see. So Disney is in a bad position. We'll see how this one does, but I don't think this is a good sign, right? When you get that many dislikes on YouTube. Reminder, like this video. Okay, we want all the likes. I got a few dislikes. How could I get any dislikes? What are those haters out there doing? Anyway, bring on the likes because it helps the algorithm. It was so bad at Disney that they actually had to dismantle the section where you could see the dislikes. So now if you go there, you only get to see the likes. you don't see any dislikes, but let's just say there aren't that many likes. 40,000 likes, like 1 million plus dislikes. So, the whole movie is just sort of ridiculous. You have Rachel Zegler, who as Snow White does not believe that the prince should rescue the princess, who doesn't believe that this should be love. Like, she's got to, go find her own destiny. Heck, maybe she'll rule the kingdom herself and be a CEO or president or something like that. It's like the Hillary Clinton version of Snow White. And people are like, come on, like, it's Snow White. And you know what? There's something kind of special about being rescued. Okay, I'm just gonna say that. I'm gonna, like, maybe it's not so PC, but I'm also gonna say there's something extremely special about love. And like, if you don't have someone to share your life with, if you don't have your own version of Prince Charming, and I'll say the same thing for a guy. Like, if you don't have your Snow White or Sleeping Beauty or whoever, Cinderella, like, if you don't have your own fairy tale, then what do you have? You're just going through the motions here. Who you partner with in life is sort of everything. And it's kind of the one thing you can sort of control, right? It's a big decision. And we should think hard about it, and we should value it. And I don't want to listen to the likes of some little 2-bit, what is she, quasi-Spanish, pretend Spanish girl from New Jersey who had a starring role in her musical theater high school production that somehow launched a career for herself in Hollywood because she's part of the whole woke police. I'm not going to take love advice from her. No one should. And I don't know what this script is, but the way she's carried on about it, it certainly doesn't seem like a traditional Snow White. And by the way, like, you lost me here, for goodness sakes. Mirror, mirror on the wall. I think you get a lying mirror, shall we say, if you want to try and convince me that Rachel Zegler is somehow hotter, prettier than one Gal Gadot. Like, game over. You lost me. All right? You just lost me. Okay? Gosh, unbelievable stuff, right? 76 research. I told you, don't forget. I know. Am I getting annoying about that? It's just that I created it for you guys. And, I've had so many people over the years say to me, hey, what do I invest in? How do I invest? And so I teamed up with Rob because I was like, we have to do this. Like, it's just important to me. And I want to be able to offer people something because I know how scary it can be and navigating all of that. And listen, I think that there's a lot of opportunity coming ahead. This is a MAGA revolution. It's going to be an economic revolution, and you want to be part of it in some way, shape, or form. So I'm sorry if I get annoying. It's actually not an ad or anything like that. It's my thing, and I want to share it with you, and I'm proud of it. I'm looking at some of your comments here, and Steve Frischman. It is Black History Month. I'm not familiar with the person that you're talking about, but we can look at that later. I'll get a read in. And M4Tune1, thank you so much as well. Just trying to make sure I keep up with all these as you guys are commenting here on this Sunday afternoon. It is unusual that I'm here. Harry, thank you for that. It is unusual that I'm here, but it just felt like an important story, a very, very important story. Oh, Peace of My Mind, you're so sweet. He says it's not annoying at all. It's not. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, M4Tune1. Trish, we look forward to all your podcasts. Watch that help. I know. And here I am talking and talking and talking. Peace of My Mind. You're asking who's the prettiest. Who do you think is the prettiest? Rachel Zegler or Gal Gadot? I don't think that this is actually much of a contest. I can't believe you're asking the question. Come on now, all right? The woke police want you to think that somehow Rachel is really hot. And I'm like, no, like, all right, like, I'm not a guy, but like, I got eyes. Thank you very much. Anyway, it's good to see you all. It really is. Spirits filled, thank you. You've started this whole super chat thing. It's really, really sweet. Listen, I'm glad to be here on a Sunday with you. I knew I wasn't, my voice was not the same as normal, but hey, at least I'm not singing opera, right? At least I'm just talking. It's a little bit easier, shall we say. Great. Great. Oh, somebody liked the Adam Martinez writing that he really liked the black dress I had on Friday. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, we spice it up here occasionally. You were not on the wrong channel. We keep it clean, but we can get a little fun on the outfits, I guess, now and then. And spirit-filled, you're 28. That's my motivation. Listen, you're 28. You should definitely be investing in growth stocks, all right? Like, that's where you want to be. You have time on your side. Go look at that growth portfolio in all seriousness, because that's you have all the time in the world. Somebody who's older might want to look at something like a basic income builder portfolio, which we have as well. But if time is on your side, it's called American Resilience at 76research.com. It is so good to see you all. We've got more content coming your way over the weekend, and I will be back tomorrow. It's Monday tomorrow, hopefully with a better voice. I'll see you then.